Meeting is being recorded. We are holding this meeting hybrid. Board of Directors present and also those on Zoom. Let's have a welcome back. Have a roll call.
Sure thing. A roll call of the Board of Directors: Brian Novel.
Here.
Scott Beaver. Dick Klein.
Here.
Norman Cusick.
Here.
Hi, Norman. Ted Lyons.
Here.
Kevin Baker.
Here.
Linda Rosenfeld. Here. Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Here's Feeling. We do have a quorum, 7 board members present. We also have our solicitor, Mike Wolf, from King's Fry, and staff members, myself, Lisa Gross, Ed Klein, John Parsons, Chris Mullen, Chuck Volk, Sue Sampson, Andrew Ward, Phil DePoe, Mark Bowen, yes, Mark is here, Lisa Miller, and Todd Marion. We're doing a mix here of live, in-person, and Zoom, so just take a little bit to get used to how that's working. But we also have Kevin Merwin, who's on call. He's our risk manager, who may be present to speak with us about another matter later on the call. We have Brian Chamberlain and Jennifer McKenna here from the City Office of Compliance. And also Amanda Schumacher from Board of Boston is on the call. Herb Higginbotham and Mason here, Mason Beck from HDR. And that is who's on our call today, or in our meeting. Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, everybody, it's Chris. Just as a point of note here, if you are a remote user and you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. It's causing a bit of an audio issue with the primary conference room. So if you are at home and you're zoomed in, please mute your microphone unless you're speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. We did receive our packages electronically and also hard copy. Is there anybody that did not receive their hard copy of documentation for you in advance? It's not. Oh, we got it. Yeah, it's somewhere. All right. It's nice to mean that everybody has received their electronic and hard copy. Before we get into this, I'd like to read something. Some appreciation in order for our Chief Executive Officer was recently appointed to the American Water Works Association Water Utility Council. One of 25 senior water utility leaders selected across the United States to serve a 3-year term on the council. WWA is an international nonprofit scientific and educational society dedicated to providing total water solutions, ensuring effective management of water, and it is the largest organization of water supply professionals in the world. The organization has more than 4,300 members and utilities that approximately 80% of the drinking water nation, nearly half of the country's wastewater treatment. So it's a nice honor to have been appointed to that. In addition to that, we were also appointed recently to served as the Board of Directors of the American Water Association Chair of the AWWA section, trustee of the Northeast District AWWA, and served on numerous committees of the association. Recently appointed to the Legislative Committee of Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association and the Executive Committee for the Water Resource Association of the Delaware Basin. I believe this LCA is at the forefront of recognition of leadership and appreciation of practice. So, congratulations. All right. A lot of good stuff there. Keep you busy.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, just
Chairman, if I came up and sat on one of the chairs.
Sure, why don't you do that? All right, let's review the agenda and need for executive session.
The agenda is, as stated, no changes to the agenda, but we can request an executive session following the close of this meeting to discuss potential litigation as well as the personnel.
So two issues.
Two issues, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Looking at the May 24th board meeting minutes.
We make a motion from the whole Lehigh County. I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I believe we have that was Jeff. Jeff was the one with staying. Okay. Thank you. All right. At this point in time, we open up the floor to any public have any comments from the board on items that are not on the agenda. Anybody have any suggestions?
No comments here, Brian.
No, thank you.
All right, moving on now to action discussion items. We have one under finance and administration, suburban division, SCADA system improvements. It's the blue documents that were in our board packet. Also electronically at pages 7 through 10.
For this one, we'll turn to Chris Mullen to present this project.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see everybody back in, at least at half mass at this point. I have a professional service authorization I'm looking for our suburban SCADA division. A few weeks ago, we approved a smaller project to try to help upgrade the communications issues that we see within our suburban SCADA issue. And this is part 2 of that this is the first step of part 2 of the larger project that is. This is a professional service authorization for Keystone Engineering to go out and review each and every one of our remote stations, offer suggestions, and subsequently build an engineering document that would be the base for the full system upgrade of our suburban division. We're looking for $214,300 as part of the professional service agreement. Keystone Engineering has become a more primary role player in our game out here. They've become highly recommended from the South Whitehall division. They've done quite a bit of work for us, and they've been very, very supportive on hours, after hours, and we've built a very good and strong base with them. So ultimately, what we're looking for is the authorization that will get us a engineering document to move forward with the system upgrades in our suburban division.
All right, I think you're done.
Yes, sir.
All right, this is design phase.
Correct. It'll cover, site visits, internal support for external bidding, as well as detailed designs, detailed drawings, as well as assistance in the bidding process.
Okay, we've spent prior to this, it was authorized about $113,000, $535,000, and the total project cost eventually would be about $2.8 million spent over a year period. They'll bring us up to date with all of our SCADA systems that are out there, or is it just a limited number that are being changed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last question?
Of all the SCADA systems we have out there, is this
Yes.
all of them, or just a limited number?
This will be all of the ones that are currently not on our cellular system. So it will evaluate anything that is still on our telog, which ultimately is dial-up, and anything that has been proven problematic over time. A lot of these systems haven't been touched in 20 plus years. And what this is going to do is going to get us onto a consistent, static, flat plane of similar SCADA systems that will allow us to communicate, control, and have better remote access to.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we have before us a capital project authorization for $244,300. That includes a professional services authorization with Keystone Insurance, SCADA system upgrades. My contract will be at $214,000.
Mr. Chairman, question, Chris, is this Keystone Engineering the same as our local Keystone Engineering?
Yes.
The answer was yes or no.
Yes, yes, it is.
It's not Keystone Consulting.
Right.
That's.
All right.
They are local, but it's a different Keystone
Right.
than what we normally see for our wastewater projects.
Thank you. So I need a motion and a second.
So
I'll second it.
All right, so Linda made the motion and seconded by Dick. All right, any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next we have, under water, we have Central Lehigh Division Upper System Water Supply Upgrade, Developer Cost Sharing Agreement, this is discussion on.
yeah, so for this one, we're going to do sort of a joint discussion between Chuck and Ed and myself and maybe Phil. We've all been working. Yes, sir.
Just a question, you sent out some links to presentation.
Yes.
Is this going to be one of those? I just want to make sure everybody on Zoom understands the links and provided via email for this presentation. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, when I do the screen share, I'll make sure everyone that actually Norman is the only one who's not doing the screen share. So we're on the same one. So we've been working with a particular developer for quite a few months now, potential large industrial user in Upper Country Township, and trying to understand what their water service needs are and how we can best serve that. So we have a few slides to share to try to orient you on where the property is and what the project looks like and what the cost will be to serve that property. So for those of you who are not able to see my screen share, the presentations are on our website for you to view, and they were emailed to the board as well. This is the first of 3. So, Chris, can you co-host me, please? Okay.
Should be good to go.
Thank you. So we have several slides to go through, and mostly just maps and figures to orient you on the project itself. This is a project by Reddington Farms, which is a dairy processing facility that is looking to locate here in the Lehigh Valley. And they have been working on a piece of property in Colesville area that is zoned for light industrial. And I'll kind of turn it to you, Chuck, to sort of walk through the slide,
Sure.
and then we'll get to the financial side for the end.
Okay. So we all have shown on this map rough location of this proposed industrial development. It's on a 48-acre tract, and what they propose to do is build a 273,000 square foot facility that's going to be used for dairy product processing. It's in our what we call our upper system. Our upper system operates at a hydraulic ring line of 688 feet, pretty much to the north of 78. We call our upper system. That's generally where it's located. There's the track just west of Fogelsville Village. There's an existing water line, our line along their frontage from well 6. That CLD well station, that's well number 6. So there's a close up of that 48-acre tract right next to another industrial tract. There is residual property there remaining after these developments that is zoned industrial. So there's certainly opportunity for additional growth out there in the west end. There's a drawing from the developer's engineer, which is a big company, showing the proposed 273,000 square foot facility with stormwater detention basins and a realignment of Main Street, which becomes Old 22. See that, and they're bringing Glenlivet Drive down. So they're calling it Glenlivet Drive West from behind the Weiss Markets all the way down. So in a perfect world, that's where the tractor trailers will go. And these are the tabulation of the requirements. Average daily consumption of 350,000 gallons per day. A peak day flow for 1 week per year. I think that's around Thanksgiving time. 500,000 gallons per day. Then their average production demand during an 8-hour production day is they're estimating at 335 gallons per minute, and that is the figure that we use to size the proposed conveyance alternative that we'll talk about in the slides. And there's the sewer requirements on the bottom as well. So you can see a lot of the water goes into the product.
We put the sewer details here just so you know that we're kind of working on both sides. But the sewer side is really an Upper Montenji Township issue. And as we talk about a little bit later in the meeting about the Act 537 plan, just to note that this project is incorporated into what Upper Montenji already has in mind for sewer.
So will this go to the pretreatment plant or defines that?
To the pre-treatment.
It will go to the pretreatment plant. Yeah, and I left out, they do require 55 PSI minimum residual pressure.
The long-term 5% plan that have these quantities in that projection for upper limit.
Yes. The maybe the numbers right there, BOP number assumes a little level for their facility. This is early on, so that's why I was curious if we're going to go to the picture. So this shows the zoning districts in Upper Mapunji for the vacant tracts. You can see the long blue tract, that's the area in question, that's zoned industrial. And then the red is the residential zone areas. So there's quite a bit of room for growth out there. So we've been studying our upper system now. I've had a project in the capital plan for the last 2 years called water supply optimization. And we've been anticipating something like this coming down the pipe. So we've been doing modeling scenarios of the upper system to simulate high demand users and what infrastructure improvements would be needed. So we were sort of ramped up when we heard from the dairy last September when they contacted us with a request for service. Here is their average demand. The additional future development demand, that's from Act 537 planning. And there's potential other industrial needs that we cannot anticipate right now, but one thing we do anticipate there will be some robust growth out there. And that has challenged our system because we primarily rely on 2 groundwater wells out there, well 6 and well 5. Well 17 is currently on an inactive status. And we have there is a connection from the lower system that relies on the CLD auxiliary pump station. And if something were to happen with that pump station, we would certainly have major supply issues out there in the system. So we're looking for a resilient, a scenario that's going to give us resilience and adequate supply to meet the immediate short-term needs and long-term needs out there. This is from our engineer that we've had on board for a few years, going through water modeling and developing scenarios to get additional supply out to the west end. At the site, you see 41 PSI circle. That's the pressure that we can deliver right now to the site. So that is inadequate for the dairy's needs. What our engineer came up with as a recommended alternative to convey additional supply and pressure to the dairy is to construct a booster station, a new booster station, just on the north side of 78, across from Boston Beer, and tie into our upper system. And we developed a draft. We're working with our solicitor in developing a draft cost contribution agreement with the developer. And based on their anticipated needs, they would share 1/3 of the cost of the pump station, and they would share the entire cost of getting water underneath 78 through an existing steel sewer casing pipe that we're acquired from Upper Wetumpka Township. So we're in the process of acquiring that. They've agreed, they've approved it. We just need to get our highway occupancy permit from PennDOT before we ink that deal. But the future growth, Ed has done his financial calculations, and the future growth does pay for this station in a relatively short amount of time.
What type of cost is it at?
And there we go. So there's a tabulation of the estimated costs, and you can see up top is the pump station, and we're reflecting their share, which is 1/3 of the cost, and they're bearing 100% of the burden to bring water underneath 78 via that existing steel casing pipe, and tap it on the Boston Beer side and bring it under, and then run to the proposed pump station.
So let's say the purpose of the pump station is mainly to provide that flow rate of 335 gallons per minute plus the PSI.
Yes, plus the added pressure, and we would like to oversize it to anticipate growth, because I think this keeps us ahead of the curve, and it provides system resilience, and we're able to meet the economic growth of the area.
The, couple meetings ago, we talked about a development, I think it's north of there, we were doing the land. I don't know if it was a tank or a pump station. Does this have anything to do with providing backup service to that new development?
Yeah, it's not necessarily needed for that development, but it certainly does enhance the supply for that development. I think that's probably Lehigh Hills.
Project that we had talked about was potentially a second storage tank up on our property that's surrounded by Lehigh Hills, and that's probably a future project that we'll be talking about, but not time to this.
We were talking about changing the lot, and we were just doing a.
Right, there's a little land swap.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. Okay, I just didn't know if that project was.
Does this project provide redundancy though? Or is it just primary?
Yeah, it provides redundancy, and it also provides primary supply, because the supply is inadequate to meet dairy's needs. But the project itself will have inherent redundancy. We'll have a backup pump. We'll probably have 3 pumps, 2 500 GPM pumps, and then a backup pump with the flexibility to add a 4th pump in the future if it needs
somewhere before that, we were talking about some major line break. What happens then?
We would be struggling.
So there's still that exposure.
Yeah, so this does provide redundancy.
Just go back to the system-wide map. So we have a pump station that's in this area, is that correct?
On Warwick Road. I think
Yes. And that pump station puts water from the lower system up into the upper system, but it's primarily fed off a single main arterial sort of transmission line. And that's the line that we would be concerned about having a break. We had a break on that line, and this pump station would be basically out of service and not able to supply the upper system. So having the new pump station on the other end of the system over here would allow that resiliency and allow the water to be fed from into the upper system from a different direction. Is that?
Yeah,
I get that right?
and we've been looking for another crossing under the 78, and it's kind of good fortune that the township contacted us and asked us if we wanted to acquire a casing pipe they were going to abandon. So it was a good time.
Get a directional drill under there.
Oh my God.
That $1 million
What's
project.
What's the casing pipe used for now?
Nothing.
Oh, they put it in and never used it.
Well, no, they did use it for sewer. They had a sewer pipe running through the casing. So we CCTV'd it to inspect it. We had our engineer do an assessment of the condition of it. And for what we could determine it's in good condition. And we got preliminary approval from PennDOT, though we didn't submit the highway occupancy permit yet. They're agreeing to the concept of how we would run an HDPE line and then grout the angular spacing around the line, thereby adding structural integrity.
The existing well we had right there, maybe I missed this, that well is in production.
Well, okay, well,
The one that's
well,
right
6,
next to
yes.
this facility.
Yeah, that's well 6. That right now, I think we're flowing that at about 450 gallons per minute, but it's permitted for 700.
But there's no way that well can be used to provide water.
Well, it would be. It's part of the upper system.
Yeah,
so
it does. Yeah, does that feed up into the storage tank?
yes.
And there's been talk about a new truck access route. Right. Talk depend on all about any road improvements in that area that affect this project. It's so close to 70.
Yeah, I have not.
The Adams Road interchange project, I think, is many years away.
Yeah.
So they're, it's kind of separate.
I can tell you, I did some research on the Adams Road interchange. The township had a big study going on. Jan was part of paying for it. Jan was out, sort of backed out of it. PennDOT's recent letter on this that I have said they would not allow an Adams Road interchange until major improvements are made at 22 and I-78 Route 100. That whole section of road has to be widened. I-78 has to be widened before they will allow Adams Road. And it looks like Adams Road is going to happen anytime soon. And the way they're going to get around it is interesting. They're going to run. See, right now the township does not allow truck access, big truck access from the village of Fulton. But now you're saying they're going to bring the road down to Lehigh Hills.
Yeah.
To get access to this.
But you wonder with GPS.
Because they can't take the trucks and go to the village. Wherever. So I don't think Adams Road is going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
That's now.
So we have one more slide, which is an important one to us, and that's Ed's figuring on the financials.
So I wanted to take a look at whether there was an adequate return on this. As Chuck had mentioned, you're doing a little bit of oversizing and for redundancy and for latching on to potential customer. But I wanted to make sure that what we had to spend and what we're going to get back after spending all that at least came out to be a positive net present value number. You can see that once you get the money from the contributed from the developer, Reddington. And we're gonna spend about almost, well, a little bit more than $1 million, $1.8 million plus. We're gonna get $675,000 of contribution from Reddington. So going back to Chuck's cost, we're gonna spend almost $1.7 million on this project. So after 1.7, we're gonna have what I would call normal expenditures on the system, which I kind of patterned after the Central Lehigh Division station. We're gonna get $286,000 plus of annual water revenue. I took a very low discount rate. I used 1.561, which was kind of what the current market yield is today. And in the last couple of days, it's actually been down a little bit. So, you know, and basically what it says is, on a net present value basis, discounted over a period of 10 years, this customer alone will generate $1.7 million net present value. So that suggests it's a good investment at least. And payback period will be 7.1 years, which stretches a little bit. But the truth is, this is for this customer only. I did not want to factor in any additional customer. That's all upside. And if that happens to take up some of the excess capacity, that $1.7 million net present value will grow, and the payback period will be short.
So we have a couple of next steps that we're planning. We wanted to share this concept with you and kind of make sure we're on the right track with how we wanted to approach it. And then we'd be digging in with the developer to understand their construction schedule and our construction schedule, because it's it's a good 2+ year project to put this together. So make sure those marry up. Work on the contribution agreement, water system agreement, including these cost sharing concepts with the developer. And I have a note here that board approval would be required for that agreement because it's a non-standard type of agreement. We did something similar like this for the Kohler project and a couple of others over the years. So we'd be bringing the actual agreement to look at in terms when we have it ready. Obviously, securing easements and permits is a big deal, big first step in getting into design and construction. So we're here today just to kind of float the ideas, make sure we're on the right track, getting feedback from the board. We're going to be digging them pretty quickly to help move this along on a schedule that meets the customer requirements.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, concerns, discussion? Well, that's the time.
All I can say is I'd rather have them there than our warehouse there, so that's true.
Is there already estimated when it will open?
On this project, no.
I think they have parking for like 250 homes.
Do you remember that?
So, what's the question?
Employment.
Sure. Yeah, they're actually moving from New Jersey, from Lake Forest, New Jersey. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Because otherwise, this is going to be all warehouse out there.
Yeah.
There's enough for that tractor trailer access now from that development.
Thank you.
All right.
165 employees.
Oh, great.
Right, moving on
Sure.
to wastewater, we have another discussion topic, Lyons Island Sewer System, interim act 3537 plan, and Treasure Town upgrade project update.
Yes, and we have lots of information to go over here. And again, this is another screen share. So for those of you who received the presentation by email, it's presentation number 2. This is also on our website. And Phil has a lot of information to share with you. Take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone. I do want to give you an update on what's been happening since we last spoke. We gave a presentation in February 2020 and May of 2020. A lot has happened since then, so we're gonna get right into it. I'm not gonna go through all the definitions and abbreviations, but if you do have any questions about something that I'm saying, please stop me and I can explain what the abbreviation is. There are a lot of them, so.
Let me stop you right away. Can we minimize the photographs?
Oh.
Right-hand side to see all the presentation. Thank you.
How's that?
Yep, that's it.
Again, please just stop me if you have a question about any abbreviation.
Can I just interrupt for a second that, because we minimized everyone's faces, we won't be able to see if someone's raising their hand, so if someone has a question, just unmute yourself and say, it. Because you can't see.
They could also type in a text comment.
Yeah. Use the chat feature.
Chat.
Okay.
And I don't want to go too far in the background. This may look familiar. This was presented in, I believe, May and February of last year about the background. So again, in 2018 and 2019 is when the region received a heavy rain, which subsequently caused the Pines Island plant to exceed its hydraulic capacity for 3 months in a row. So that is why we are talking about this topic right now. Again, just to remind you, in March of 2019, the EPA lifted the AO, which is the administrative order. They transferred oversight back to the DEP. And of course, as soon as that happened, the rain started. DEP got back involved. The heavy rain stopped in the middle of 2019. And that's when DEP came in to talk to us. We've been working with DEP since about August of 2019, continuously. So, just to remind you, DEP did grant the region the 2020 connection management plan for new modules. Which I think is on the next slide. So, we'll wait for the next slide. Here's the cover of the current plan that was submitted. So it was originally submitted to DEP in September of 2020. And there were 5 main goals for the plan. It was to get the next bucket allocations from 2021 to 2025. It was to establish this year's flow program. It was to re-rate the Pines Island plant to 44, 45. To address Truction Town and to establish a schedule for the long-term plan. So those are the 5 main points that this plan talked about. And I do have some good news. I have verbal confirmation from DEP that the letter was sent on Friday, which we have not received a copy yet, but he verbally told me about a half hour ago before he came in here that it was he personally sent it. He granted us the next bucket for allocation. So that's good news.
Who's the reviewer?
Scott Buckner, DEP.
Oh, how large is that bucket?
Thanks, next slide.
One other question from the last slide, that if we had an approval letter from them, did he say, I mean, the major comments, or the report's just approved and you're good to move on, or?
When I talked to him on the phone before I came in here, there was no major comments. It's basically the bucket, just keep your schedule.
Oh, that's good.
Can you provide progress for the top of that letter?
As soon as we get it. Again, we may get it today or tomorrow. So the 2020 bucket was for 1.5 MGD. And again, these are all projections from municipalities for new planning modules. That's all this bucket is. And that's on the second column there, it's a 1.5. Then the red column there is a 2.9 number. That was submitted back to DEP in September. And they asked us to add some additional developments that were grandfathered from the past. So you can see it went from 2.9 to 3.1. So that's the number that he will grant us for new modules through 2025. So that gets us to 4.6. Again, in new modules, this is a new flow, it's new modules. This is distinction there.
I'd like to do 1.5 for 2020. Can you carry it over?
Yes, he did. Thank you for saying that. Yes, he did grant us the carryover balance. There was about 600,000 that was carried over.
Just to interject, sorry, because we just finished the conversation about Reddington Farms, to highlight how that works, on the line, it says Upper Mackenzie. Future planning modules support, I can't read what that number is for.
450.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that includes the 250 for.
Yeah, somebody actually had a placeholder in there for a large user. 223,000 for a large user.
Go back, I saw something that Salisbury asked for $11,000. Well, that was Southwest, sorry.
So, yeah.
I thought it was Salisbury.
Nobody's happy with that.
So this schedule may look familiar as well. This was submitted with our interim 537 plan. It just lays out the different items that have to occur between now and 2025. So the top box, we've taken care of flow projections. We submitted the Part 2 permit. The flow characterization study is underway. The second box there is the preliminary treatment alternatives, which I'll get into. That was the pre-treatment plant option that we're looking at. And we will have something to review shortly from the consultants. So that's underway. Third box, again, that's the flow characterization study, which I'll get into more details, but that's currently underway. This last box is a new box that DEP wanted us to add. This is about Trexlertown, and we will need to meet with them about this topic specifically to address it. He told us to put it in the interim plan, and when we're ready to talk about our resolution, he wants to talk about it. So that's going to be happening shortly. The admin issues, they won't stop until the end. All the agreement discussions, all the cost sharing discussions. The alternatives analysis, again, that's going to really start when the model is done in June of 2022. That's going to take us all the way through June of 2024. So we're at about 2 years to finalize our 2050 solution. So it's a really good ramp up, this time next year. And again, we're sticking to this March 2025 submission date. So it's not going to give us much time to get all the financing together and write the actual plan. But this is what we submitted to DEP in March of 2020. This is what they are expecting to see. So what have we been doing the past couple months? AECOM, Arcadis, Jacobs, we've been working basically nonstop about looking at the pre-treatment plant option. Again, that's one of the options from the past, was to see what it would cost to take the pre-treatment plant to full treatment. And 6 years ago, it was looked at, but it was looked at, it was looked at a high level. This has gotten into a very, very granular level. Again, their report is forthcoming.
That's a question, and maybe you have it in here, but back then when that was done, Trexlertown wasn't an issue. So is there potential to take flow to eliminate the Trexlertown issues by taking that to the pre-treatment plant?
I'll get into Trexlertown.
Okay.
So I'll get into Trexlertown.
Okay, thanks.
So again, the pre-treatment plant option, there's going to be a full report from AECOM shortly. And if you recall, that you also authorized a tool to look at the revenue planning side of things, which we're meeting this week to talk about final product. So again, everything everything's on schedule with regarding the evaluation of the future plan. It's gonna take some time to digest what they have to say, so. Again, everything's on schedule. The next bullet is flow study. And we actually started planning for this last June. All meters, all temporary meters were installed by March of this year. So we have 73 meters throughout the system that are temporary. And we're using 32 permanent meters. So it's about 105 meters right now. And we also have 25 rain gauges throughout the system. And typically we want to have this data for about 8 to 9 months. So we'll see towards the end of October how the data looks. If we may extend that, to the end of November. But again, everything's on schedule with the flow study. And Arcanus was authorized, I believe, in April of this year to begin the model. They're starting to build the model right now. And that should be ready by June of 2022, so we can start our alternatives analysis. And the last one put here was the re-rate for the Kleins Island. If you recall, it's going to be about 44, 45. We have a submission in the DEP for 45 currently. That was submitted in January. They can't act on that until they give us our plan for what we say this did. So this will be the next item to occur with this re-rate. Again, this is just hydraulic re-rate. I did want to point out and give Chris and his GIS team a shout out. This is a tool that they developed. It's a web-based tool. And our consultant is using this extensively. Basically, it breaks down every single basin in the system. So it helps tremendously when they're evaluating the data. So kudos to Chris and his team for developing this. This was not available 6 years ago. So again, every single basin has been broken down, developed. So it's a very helpful tool. Just to close out the work in progress, every municipality provides me with their quarterly updates on their I&I efforts to reduce I&I. And that was a DEP mandated report that I'll talk to about here. So, as part of this, part of the inner plan was, we have to reduce I&I. And every municipality provides me what they're doing, and it goes in to DEP for the record. So. And just that bullet point about LC and city collaboration. The city has identified 5 projects, and one of them has already been completed. The second one is underway right now. So the city identified those projects, and LC executes their I&I projects. So the admin side of things, we've been having monthly, we call it KISS meetings, which is the Kleins Island Sewer System. So every month we've been meeting, and documentation of that goes to DEP as well. We've also set up some steering committee meetings to talk about some more detailed items, mostly related to the model and related to the agreements. So we've had 6 of those since January. Yeah, so the KISS meetings are monthly, and everyone's invited. About 30, 35.
Attendance will be getting, most of them show up.
Yep, about 30 to 35 people show.
Wow. Yeah.
It's all virtual. For now, yes. And the steering committee is a little bit smaller. It's about half that. So the 2 main topics for the steering committees have been the review of the existing agreements, and how to handle model issues, which we're working through both of those items right now. And like I mentioned, we're required to submit quarterly reports to DEP to keep track of our bucket of allocation. So the next one's due in middle of July. And the last item here is, again, the long-term plan. So next June to June 2024 is going to be jam-packed with reviewing all alternatives, whether that be, pre-treatment plant or continue with the Klein's Island and upgrading everything downstream.
So what kind of sense are you getting from the municipalities as far as collaboration? Are they serious about it? Especially when it comes to rewriting all the municipal agreements? I mean, what's your sense? It's gonna be successful with collaboration?
I think the collaboration is definitely there. The agreements are going to be difficult, but at this
I
point,
mean, the municipalities get the sense they want to resolve it.
I think at this point, we're not a choice.
I mean, do they realize that they're gonna get another shutdown and eventually, they're not gonna have. The feds might come back.
I think if it's not clear, it should be clear. So, I mean, I don't think DP's, they're not bluffing her, they're serious, so 2025 is the date for the next 25-year plan. So you better get that schedule or there's no problems.
Can we preempt and start somebody on that actually writing for the comprehensive agreement between all the
Yeah, so the 3 of those 6 steering committee meetings have been about that specific topic. It's gonna be a long process, but that's what we started now, yeah. I know Lisa, you have some thoughts about it.
Well, I think that the question about regional collaboration, municipal collaboration is all gonna come down to the cost and how the costs are gonna be shared. So as of right now, we don't have a lot of details about cost. It's kind of conceptual from prior studies. Once we get the cost, we understand who needs how much new allocation and what it's gonna cost them to build the facilities to deal with it, then we know that we're gonna need some new agreement language, at least to deal with the new cost aspect of it. So there's generally like agreement at that level, but we know we need a new agreement to deal with the future costs that are coming. And, to do studies to see what's the best alternative. So we've been having, I think, good meetings, very good participation, and Phil's been doing just a tremendous job of keeping the one relationships with each municipality strong and making sure that they are engaged.
I think Scott, to your point though, and everyone that knows that the collection system is going to be the issue. Forefront.
The conveyance.
Yeah, the conveyance collection system at the interceptors. So it's going to be a matter of when and what.
Have any thought about using someone to facilitate the group? And I know this LCA is acting as a leader, but you also want to be involved. Sometimes you should have an outsider.
So we had Mike Schober, is a consultant at Arrow Engineering, who facilitated the development of the interim Act 537 plan. He attended a lot of the municipal meetings, because our regional meetings, the KISS meetings, we all know each other. It's township managers, borough managers, those kinds of folks. But when it comes to approvals, it's totally. So Mike was really very good at facilitating that and helping that process happen. But for the engineering work, seems to be working pretty well with Phil actually facilitating.
How was the I&I that was supposed to have done for instance last year? Were those goals met by all the municipalities?
They're expected to do something every year.
Right. Were they met, like, for instance, last year?
I mean, yes, everyone's doing something. It's about different magnitudes, right?
Right.
But everyone who has I&I, the larger systems are doing something. It's all going on the record. Again, it's different, different magnitudes. Some people do, spend a couple of millions, a little bit less. So.
But there are targets, like, for instance, government claims will have a target of I&I that they're supposed to get rid of in a year. Meeting those targets.
Yeah, I know Arcadis talks to them briefly, every now and then about their individual goals. But, again, for the purposes of the dinner plan, they'll provide what they did for the past quarter. And if that's what they're,
And then do they just estimate what they're gonna read, or they actually have a meter reading to justify that stuff?
well, they do have they do.
Confirm their production.
Yeah, if you recall, Arcadis did a 2020 rainfall derived flow filtration analysis for all 4 LCA municipalities. So he's gone over that in detail with them, what he's seeing, and more work needs to be done. So that, so it's not going to stop next year. So
I would think that Phil doesn't have to police that, DEP would be policing that, because you have individual numbers of gallonage that each community wants. If they're submitting their reports to DEP and they're checking on the full report, they're not doing what they're supposed to. DEP could say, well, we're not signing that planning document.
That's true.
That's where it should be policed by them, not by us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but if the community chooses not to do it, then it's the
And they want that
consequences.
DEP one for their,
That's where really the enforcement comes in.
I don't know, is that how it's doing, or is DEP seeing it as one big picture?
they're seen as one big picture bucket, but they expect these quarterly reports every quarter. So again, I'm not sure what kind of detail we're looking at in these reports, but
There's an element of internal accountability among the group, because when we're talking to the other subcommittee or steering committee that Phil has developed is around the modeling effort and what assumptions you put into the model when you're trying to look out 25, 30 years, what's the future flow gonna look like? You have to put in some assumptions about how much I&I is going to be increasing or decreasing based on whatever work you're doing. And so there are some internal targets as far as reduction, like the Western Lehigh group had always said they were going to reduce I&I by 25%. And so we build that into the model and say, this is what the future project upgrades need to be to handle future flows based on the assumption that we are actually going to hit that target of 25% reduction. But, over time, you have to keep measuring to see that it's actually happening. And municipalities need to keep doing the projects that they say.
yeah, to your point, Lisa, too, if all the results are going to be shown by this time next year in the model. We have to make some sort of assumptions about future I&I reduction. But it will be what it is this time next year with the model. All the results are going to be put it in with the future growth. Any problem areas are going to light up. So the big key is future I&I reduction. How do you quantify that? That's something we're talking about in our student. How do you relate to the model itself?
So part 2 of this discussion is on the Trexler Town part, but we wanted to kind of break here and on the 537 work and the regional stuff, there were more questions before we go to Trexler Town.
And one more thing too, DEP has recognized, our efforts. I think that was part of the push. Should regional libraries, DF said that he recognizes what we've been doing over the past couple months. So good. It's positive. Okay, so Trexler Town. There's a bottleneck between basically the Goodwill Fire Company, upstream of that, and it basically goes all the way down to Spring Creek Pump Station. So it's a 24-inch interceptor. Fortunately, it's flat, so that's why the capacity issues are there. And when it rains, there are problems. And this has been known about for a long time. And I'll get into some potential ideas how to solve this. So option one, an HCR was hired, I believe, early last year to look at the specifics about how to handle this issue. And one of the issues is, or one of the options, could we just install a parallel interceptor? Whether that be right next to the existing pipe, or whether that be in Town Road itself. And the answer is, you can do that. It will solve the issue in Town up to a certain point, but unfortunately, you're just going to push the problem downstream. So if you don't extend the interceptor all the way to Spring Creek pump station, it's just going to come out. So the answer is, you can't just stop at where Town Road and Spring Creek Road intersect.
Yeah.
If you stop there, everything's just going to come out of that manhole because you're just pushing it downstream. So if you want to solve that problem, then you have to extend it all the way to the pump station. At double the cost. But if you push it to the pump station, then you have to increase the pump station. Then it's going to push it down to the parkway. So this is at the top of the system. And so it's out of sequence. This should be the last thing that's done. Not the first.
Yeah. So increase capacity downstream first to work the way up.
Which has been known, it's been known and known and known. But that's, so it's been reconfirmed again. So if you want to, put an interceptor from where the problem is to the pump station, time that we don't have to spend on the design, the acquisition. The bigger issue is the downstream issues.
By putting this interceptor in, it's parallel interceptor, is that going to increase the flow through Spring Creek pump station?
Yeah, exactly, yes. So that means Spring Creek will be upgraded.
Why is it not increasing the flow? It's the same flow coming through, it just doesn't flow fast, but it's flat.
It won't overflow the system anymore. Everything will be contained in the pipe.
How much is overflowing the system? Is it overflowing 5 days?
It was during the wet weather period. It was overflowing during dry days, yes.
You refer to 5 days.
Yeah, so it's anticipated in 3 years there will be dry day overflows.
Especially when like the area comes on board.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So if you contain all the flow into the pipe, there's going to be less overflows. That means if it's in the Spring Creek pump station, we think that needs to be upsized. Yeah. It's all going to that parkway. So the conclusion is that if we do not do the pre-treatment plan option, if we stay as is, this will need to be done. But it will need to be done at the end. So we work our way down the downstream side, right? Work our way up.
You say if what?
If we keep the pre-treatment plan as is now, with the discharge from the interceptor, this will need to be done. But it will be done last.
And what are the projects that would have to be done before that? Spring Creek upgraded, Spring Spring upgraded.
Well, for that, the parkway needs to be addressed between the Kleinstein plant and parkway. So yeah, it's its own sequence. So this is the most critical bits at the top of the system.
When you say this one can be done last, does the 25 or 30 million dollars include the work below the screen?
No.
So that will all be in addition.
Yes, that's an estimate that will get us the new interceptor from the problem area now to Spring Creek.
That was my question. That makes the pretreatment option probably much more attractive because if you take the flow out of the system, treat it there and not have to take it all the way to Klein's Island. That probably, I'm assuming that was never considered 6 years ago.
Not
Right,
So that's what we're trying to pay.
Right.
All these costs, because pre-treatment is like a cheap box.
Right, sure, but it's cheaper than it was 6 years ago, probably, right? Because you have this actual
Right.
savings from not doing this work.
Correct. So the conclusion is that, again, this is what we need to be done. sure it can happen. The second option was looking at an underground storage tank. It was like a 6-foot diameter pipe. That was kind of, I don't want to say it was thrown out there a couple years ago, but perhaps that would work. The modeling confirmed this does not work because it's the same thing. You can build a big underground storage pipe at X million gallons of capacity. You have the same issue downstream. Downstream pipe is too small.
So you release it slowly.
During storm. So during a big storm event, pipe would fill up, right? And then everything downstream would start to back up out of the manholes. Because you can't release your storage. Unless you extend it all the way down to Spring Creek again.
But the storage tank is kept, is holding all.
Yeah, but I guess the issue is the amount of volume needed for this is not practical.
Right.
Because the amount of volume that's expected to be overflowed is much larger than what's practical.
What kind of volume are you talking about in this option? Figures on 40 position based now, $3 million?
Yeah, there's different options looked at, yes. But again, one of the options was a big 72-inch pipe underground. Another option was a 3 million gallon FED, which you want to say
That's work, $3 million. It's
not enough. Enough. Because again, we're trying to go through 2050.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Right, so it may work for the next 10 years.
Well, that's what I mean, give us some breathing room until we.
But the problem is, it would work, it's the same thing as option one, it would work in construction town area. But if you don't go down Spring Creek, you're just gonna be backing up manhole right there at the intersection of Spring Creek and construction town road. So that it has to go down to Spring Creek.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, I can see that, for sure.
But that, when we go back to option one, then you're pushing everything downstream with the city.
But I thought the whole flow position basically holds everything back and then you release it slowly afterwards, right? Slowly then it's over.
If you don't get back-to-back storm events. That's the
Well,
biggest
that's-
thing, and I'll tell you, I actually had a client, who they put storage bases in, and that they had overflows so many times because they got a big storm, and they couldn't process the flow of the storage bases quick enough, and then they got another one at the air too late.
Right.
And that is, the cost of conveyance and pumping and treatment is dollar for dollar, way better than dollars for storage. It's much more economical to treat it or convey it than
Well, I
to
would
store it.
agree, yeah, long term, yeah, sure, long term, that's, yeah, understood.
For you, how many slides do you have?
We're almost up to the final.
Keep going with the
Yeah,
presentation.
sorry.
So the third option quickly, just to refresh your memory. Like I said, 10 years ago, this was thought about extensively, which that means it was thought about 10 years before that. And the idea was to take the flow from pre-treatment plant, build a new force main, tie into the Spring Creek force main, which would tie in, which gets into the parkway. So this was fully designed, fully permitted, and it was not built for a variety of reasons. This was the identified solution back 20 years ago. And again, this can't be done because of that downstream impact. So it was thought about extensively, but this will be the next slide. That's typically could be our saving grace. So what we've come up with collaboration, Scott, to your point, the collaboration here has been great regarding the whole region. There is a Upper Makunji interceptor that takes some of their development to the north and the east of the pretreatment plant. It basically follows Mill Creek Road. So it's been installed, I can't remember when it was installed, years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And they have excess capacity in that interceptor. And Upper McCutcheon has, they're on board with this idea. So the proposed, again, it's not a permanent solution, it's an interim solution. We would build a small pump station at the plant. We would install a force main into the Upper McCutcheon's interceptor, which we already have easements for, because we got that during the I-Run project from the last slide. There's a small little easement in Upper McCutcheon Park that they would provide to us. And that would relieve, again, short term, it would relieve us in the Truxton area while we determine what our long-term solution is. So that last bullet point there is a powerful statement. Because this interceptor has excess capacity, it's not a perfect solution because this can't handle all the storms. But for the next 10 years, it's a dramatic improvement to the situation. So again, all we're going to do is potentially take, roughly 2.5 MGD from the effluent of the pre-treatment plant, pump it over to the Upper McCutcheon system. So basically, it's just rerouting the sewage. Instead of going down Churchill Town, it's going to go down McCutcheon.
And we have to build the intercept, the overcome intercept, that does not go to the Spring Creek pump station now.
It does.
Or it does.
Yep. There's a manhole right outside of the Spring Creek.
Okay, we have our line going in there, and they have their line going too.
Correct. So they
And that's what overload the downstream facilities?
well, because so the problem is, I guess the good thing is, we're not going to need to upgrade Spring Creek because it's going to get there just a different way. Yeah, so the answer is no. There will be a minimal downstream impact.
So the only thing coming through the old existing interceptors is still coming out of Schaefer Runway to the west, right?
Well, you talking about the Upper McCutcheon line?
Yeah, I'm talking about our interceptors.
Oh, right, yeah, Briansville, right.
That will still continue to flow.
Yeah, right. So basically,
The same amount is still going through the pump stations.
say now we'll get to the pump station and get there a different way.
Just that it's not backing up to the trucks.
Right. So basically we're just gonna take 2.5 that would come down Churchill Town, we're just gonna push it to the Upper McCutcheon system, which has the capacity for it.
This is dry day flow.
Dry day flow.
So
So
that is wet. You don't tell nothing.
we can handle it up to a 5-year storm. So again, it's not a perfect solution, but this is what this is our get out of jail card for the next 10 years while we figure out what we're doing long term. So again, we have the easements already, except that small little portion in Grange Park. It will be the details of the pump station will be determined how fancy it needs to be. We're estimating $3 to $5 million. It can be built by 2024. And again, I mentioned that DEP wanted something in the interim plan about this. So we talked about this briefly, but they want to talk about it in more detail. They are aware of this solution.
One of those options was another interceptor running to Spring Creek Pump. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that would, to me, sounds like that would equate to the same thing as a line coming down from Upper McCutcheon.
Regarding the volume hitting the pump station, or
Yeah, the same volume is still hitting the pump station.
I see what you're saying, but the volume is indicated that going down the Upper country route will not mean an increase in Spring Creek pump station.
But if we build an interceptor, a parallel interceptor, it would require a Spring Creek pump station to be upgraded.
Correct.
That's what I don't understand either. It's the same flow coming through.
Yeah, we can get into all those details too.
Is it because it just runs slower because it's flat?
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, it's definitely in there different ways, right? So it may take more time, maybe transit time to get from the top to the bottom. So there's a lot of hydraulics, why you should involved in the details of that, but again,
Personally, I like your idea, I like this idea of, using the up and country system a little bit enforcement rather than all the environmental impact of building a parallel intersection.
yeah,
If you just agree, that's gonna be a real nightmare.
yeah, right.
Then,
It
that's
can't,
expensive land out there.
yeah, actually a point about the volume difference, and that'll be worked out during the design, but that's the model is indicated so far. Again, it could be hydraulics, the way it transits, the time to get there.
So the $3 to $5 million, is that just the hard cost to build the line? Is upper township on something for the capacity we'll be using?
They have not indicated that yet, so no, I don't think so. They don't. That would be this, the total cost of the design, building, and construction.
Again, just getting back to your comments about the regional collaboration, I think Kenji is very aware that this benefits them and be willing to have work that's happening in the township continue to happen. So they're very open to this arrangement. In fact, they kind of came up with some of the parts of the idea. So
They're fully on board with this, let's say.
Just a comment that this is an interim solution. Possibility still remains of expansion of the treatment plant. The property that we switched between Gandil and ourselves, which is kind of like that area right there.
yeah.
You're running right through the middle of that with pipeline. But I don't know if you've done any preliminary work on conceptual design. We want to make sure we don't have to.
But just keep in mind, I don't know if the folks who are online can see my mouse, but kind of bisecting this property is a very large EPL easement that we can't construct underneath. So any expansion of the pre-treatment facility likely happen in the northwest corner of this property. So
Right.
That's the one.
And we looked at the conceptual design layout, just how much property are we going to need?
For the pre-treatment option.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all being looked at, which will be available soon. And again, I do want to stress that this is an interim solution. This is not it's been conveyed to us. Our country doesn't want this to be a permanent solution.
Okay.
So just to wrap up, again, there's two options that we talked about. Convert PTP to full treatment, or start at the bottom system, like Scott talked about, work our way up to this area. So those are the two main options that the long-term solution will look at. And again, 2025 is the target date to have this nailed down.
When you said parallel intersection, you talking possibly just running a whole new intersection from Flagler all the way up?
Not exactly, but there's some of the areas will need to be parallel.
That's what I always felt. That's looking for the really long term.
Yeah, some areas will need it, parallel, some won't. And then we get into the whole regional core pump station discussion. That's going to be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so again, the next step for 2021 is to talk to DEP immediately about this topic. So,
All right. Thank you
That's
very
all
much.
we have.
Well, actually, that sounds more promising. Okay. All right, moving on to the agenda. We didn't get her ahead in April. May.
Oh, that's right, the last time it was up.
Well, we distributed to them, I guess. Talk about May report.
All right, so for those of you who are online. This is the third of the 3 presentations we have for today. May financials.
Okay. We'll talk about what went on in May. Take a look at the summary, and you're looking at the month right now. On the income statement, LCA ended up with about $1.2 million of net income. Helped out by positive number on suburban water. Wastewater was a little bit on the negative side, and city division was positive by almost $1.2 million. As we compare against the Q2 forecast, you see suburban water was better by 145,000. Wastewater was down a bit forecast, but the city division was $800-some thousand over, and that helped LCAD over against forecast. Cash flows. We're positive in total. That's really aided by some highly positive number from the city division, 1.6. Water was in the negative side, wastewater was on the negative side. We're comparing the forecast, suburban water was better by 199. Wastewater was down by 183, and city division was highly favorable, $829. So altogether, again, we're better than forecast. So both on the income side and on the cash flow side for the month, LCA ended up positive and better than forecast. Debt service coverage ratios are tough to talk about in a singular month, so we'll defer that till the year-to-date statement. So, where are we year-to-date through May? Suburban water is positive, suburban wastewater is positive, city division positive. So we're up almost $4 million on the positive side of income compared to forecast. Suburban water is up a bit, 145. Wastewater down 190, and the city division up 816,000. So altogether, the net income was on the positive side and better than forecast for LCA. On the cash flows, suburban water was on the negative side, wastewater was on the negative side, but the city was very, very positive year to date so far. Compared to forecast, we're 199 better on suburban water. 183 down against suburban forecast suburban wastewater, and city division is up by 129. So again, LCA benefits by that favorable variance. Cash flows better. Now the debt service coverage ratios. 1.4 on suburban water. That's obvious. All three of them are better than target. 1.4, 10.9 on wastewater, city division 1.88. So that's all good news, better than internal target of 1.20, and actually better than forecast, slightly off forecast on suburban wastewater, and city division was just a little bit better than forecast. So we'll get into some of the year-to-date major factors on suburban water. Net income greater than zero, so that's good news. We are also higher than forecast. Driving some of this is higher operating revenues, lower operating expenses, and investment income is down a little bit to forecast. On cash flow side, we are at a deficit, but that deficit is better than what we had forecasted. Then you get a break from higher operating cash from operations, as we just talked about. CAPEX is slightly higher, just a little bit unfavorable, and again, the lower investment income is driving it. On the wastewater side, again, good news on net income, greater than zero. However, it's a little bit lower than forecast, and where that showed up is operating revenues were a little bit lower. That's on the municipal side. We're helped some by lower operating expenses to offset some of that. And this fund had a little bit higher investment income. On the cash flow side, we're at deficit. That is lower than forecast with the income or cash from operations being a little bit less than forecast. K-Tax is a little bit lower, so that helped. And investment income is slightly higher. That should read, so I won't colorblind on that. On the city side, net income greater than zero, better than forecast. You got higher operating revenues, got lower operating expenses. Again, there's not much investment income, so our interest income is a little bit lower than forecast. Cash flows surplus side, higher than forecast. Getting the 8 from higher cash from operations, and slightly lower K-Tax to offset the lower investment income. So as we look at operating ratios, and this is operating revenue compared to operating expenses that includes depreciation. So on the water side, we're 1.22, so we're better than fiscal year budget year to date, and we're better than the internal target. On the suburban wastewater side, we're at 1.21, and that's better than the target budget for the year, and better than internal target of 1. On the city side, it's above 2.03, which is higher than the budget and also higher internal target. So total LCA is healthy with respect to operating ratio, 1.58 versus 1.36 versus 1. So all good. Okay, this is taking depreciation out of the picture now. So if we were good with depreciation in, we're obviously going to be better once you strip out depreciation. And so 1.66 versus the budget and internal target is good. Suburban wastewater at 1.70 versus the 2 targets, which is better than the 2 targets. 2.80 on the city side versus 2.1 and 1.15, and total LCA 2.19 versus 1.76 and 1.20. So again, all good news. So yeah, I'm giving all good movements for that 537 plan. Suburban water and debt service coverage we talked about. We're at 1.4 versus the target 1.2, 1.2. 10.98 on suburban wastewater against 8.17. That's good. And an internal target of 1.2. City, again, good, 1.88 versus 1.62 and 1.20. And it's nice to be able to say that very freely, because at one time we were always worried about that ratio being too close to 1.2. So altogether on the LCA side, 2.15 versus 1.8 and 1.2. So good. It's all good. In terms of where we are with operating revenues, and this is compared year to date, compared to forecast. Suburban water is up a bit, by 3.54 points. Suburban wastewater is down a little bit, by 3 points, 2 point some points. Again, most of that was in the municipal side. In the city, we're up by 3 points, so not too bad. Operating expenses, we're at 99.6. Suburban water, so that's below the forecast. Also on suburban wastewater side, 99.4, and on the city side, 97.7. So all 3 are lower than forecast in terms of total operating expense. Year-to-date CAPEX, we're at 100.1, so pretty much spot on. Suburban wastewater is spot on. And the city side is down 99.3%. So a lot closer than almost right on target with the 100. So operating revenue is what we look like for year-to-date, $5 million versus 4.9. So we're up a little bit. What we think it's going to finish at is 12.9 versus 12.7, so that's good. Suburban wastewater is an 8 versus 8.3, again, reflect this slightly unfavorableness on the municipal side. However, on the total, we think we're going to come in at 20.1 versus 20.0 for the year, so that's good. City, we're bless it, 18.1 versus 17.5, so that's good. We think that the city should finish about 45.4 versus 46. In terms of operating expenses, 4.2 versus, well, actually 4.2 versus 4.2, a couple $1,000 lower year to date. We think for the year will be 10.7 versus 11.2, so that is good news. On the suburban wastewater side was 6.6 something versus 6.7, so we're a little bit favorable. We think we'll finish at 18.1 versus 18.9, so looking good on that fund as well. And on the city side, 8.9 versus 9.1, so we're favorable year to date. And we think we'll be at 27.7, 27.792 up, but actually just a little bit. So this is the only one that's just a little bit up to budget, and we'll see how that goes in the next couple of months. Apex, 920 versus 919, not much difference there. I think we're still going to be at 4.153 versus 4.190 for the total for the year. On suburban wastewater, 1575 versus 1647, so down a little bit. We think we'll be at 4.3 versus 3.9. So this one's got some unfavorableness to budget based on where we think we're going to finish the year. And on the city side, 1.8 versus 1.8. So we think we'll be at 8.1 versus 8.8 on the city side. Keep in mind on the city side that the spending is changing on the VFDs and the funding is changing on the All right, where are we cash on hand? So pretty good. What is that, 300 and some? Oh, I need to change that so I can read it better now. 328, we're at 180 some on suburban wastewater, and the city is above 180 as well, so comfortable with that. Just kind of a quick way where we think we're going to finish the year based on Q2 forecast, which will change in another month. So, but we're favorable to budget and income for suburban water, wastewater, 687 favorable. City will be down 600 and some, so altogether LCA will be favorable by 668. Cash flows, suburban water up the forecast, or the budget, I'm sorry. Wastewater up, city division will be down, and keep in mind, so I pulled $2 million out of the forecast related to the funding, PennFest funding on the BFPs. So, and all the debt service coverage ratios were all above target, favorable budget on water, wastewater, down just a little bit on city division, but it's still healthy debt service coverage ratio.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any questions? All right, moving on then to item number 8 on the agenda, monthly system operations overview.
Yes, hello everyone. We'll start off well, like we always do, water production in Allentown. Total demand was 22.81 MGD. Sean Spring accounted for 7.06 MGD. Crystal Spring 3.80 MGD. We pulled 11.9 MGD out of the Lehigh Creek, and the Lehigh River averaged out to 50,000 gallons per day. Central Lehigh total demand was 11.86 MGD. Feed from Allentown 8.01. well production, Central Lehigh 3.85 MGD, and the sum of all 12 of the other suburban water systems equaled 150,000 gallons per day. Wastewater side, Klein's Island treated 30.89 MGD. 5.16 of that came from the pretreatment plant. Sum of all 5 of the other suburban wastewater systems, 170,000 gallons per day. Precipitation totals, 3.56 inches for May. Compliance reports, 17. NOVs were 0. SSOs and bypasses were 0. Main breaks on the Allentown side was 0. Suburban, we had 2. Customer service phone inquiries, 1,637. Water shutoffs for non-payment, 213. There were no injury accidents, and there were no emergency declarations. One significant upgrade that we did have on the Allentown side, we replaced the sodium hypochlorite generation system at Sean Spring that was originally installed in and around 2007 with a new, much more compact and efficient system. The unit produces 0.1% sodium hypochlorite, which then is injected at the spring. So we have contact time between the spring and the 5-mile run down to the water filtration plant. The original unit back in 2007 replaced the actual chlorination system. South Whitehall didn't really care for that so close to populated areas. So we all got together and we decided to go with a sodium hypochlorite generation system. With low strength hypo, even though the creek is right aside of the control building, we didn't have to install any kind of secondary containment, which saved a lot on the overall price of the job originally. The new system produces 150 pounds of chlorine per day compared to the original one that only produced 125,000 gallons or 25 pounds per day. And also the new unit now runs off 480 instead of 240, which hopefully will mean that the entire system is electrically much more efficient. As noted, no NOVs or SSOs. Other highlights, other than repeating the fact that we had no NOVs or SSOs, there was really nothing else to report.
Okay, thanks, Sean. All right, any questions on it? Moving on, staff comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I forgot about this one. So on June 30th, which is a couple days, we will close on the suburban water refinancing. The bond option back in the early part of the month was, I'll say, highly successful. We ended up getting lots of interest, and at the end of the day, our effective interest rate is 0.94%. So all of the numbers got better.
Good news, thank you. Staff comments, others.
No, I appreciate you jumping in there. I forgot we didn't have a meeting earlier in June to share that piece. So very, very good. I have nothing further.
Solicitor comments?
I don't have any comments except for I will not be at the next meeting. My partner Kevin Reed will be here. He was bond counsel on the financing that was mentioned before.
All right, thank you. All right, opening up the floor to the public. Any comments on anything that we discussed today or anything at all? And also, if you have any comments on the meeting and how we ran this as a hybrid and make sure that you could hear everything that's going on. Any comments?
Hi, Brian, it's Jenny. Thank you. I know comments, and I can say though about the hybrid meeting is very good. The audio gets a little bit wonky. I think it might have to do with the speaker's movements away from the microphone. It's kind of like, remember, what was that movie with, it was a musical and they were just doing the talkies and they were trying to fit the new people in. And as they turned away from the microphone, I can't remember, it was with,
Rain.
yeah, Singing in the Rain. Yeah. But no, it was very good to be able to participate remotely. We appreciate you going to all this trouble.
Okay.
If I could actually, that's a good point, Jenny, thank you for mentioning that. For those of us who are in the room, there are two black pucks, looks like hockey pucks on the ceiling with a red light on them. Those are the microphones. So if we're turning our head away from them, that's probably causing some of that. And also, for your reference, the camera that we're being viewed from is actually in the back of the room. So if you wanted to turn and wave to the folks online, that's that's the view. You're seeing us. Yeah.
Thanks for waving, Liesel.
Any other comments from the public?
I have nothing to add, Brian.
Thank you for being here. Okay, this time we're going to go into recess of the board, and we're going to have come back, and let's make it at 2 o'clock.
Okay. And
15
then
minutes for the executive session.
the executive session does have a separate Zoom link. So for those of you who received the invitation for the executive session and are doing that online, use the new link to the second.
Okay, then we'll went out to Zoom. But
Yeah.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day.